So the talk we're going to have today is programming for tactical populations. We're going to kind of talk about some of the education that you need to have behind you to make proper choices, an in-depth look at, what type of abilities you need in order to perform your job correctly. And the problem with it is, tactical populations is a broad spectrum of different needs. But through my work with Ranger Division and general infantry, light infantry, and firemen, I've noticed that it's mostly the intensity level that changes, but we all almost need the same thing because we're all human. So a lot of the muscular weaknesses we'll go over today are equal across the board. And then we'll also be able to show you kind of some of the results that we've achieved over long-term use of the system that we call conjugate system, but in reality it's more like a Russian sequencing system that we use for maximal effort. So my general background, Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science under Dr. Kramer. He left at UConn, I think in 2002 when I was a junior, but huge influence in my education. Then also he had a huge following behind Zatsiorsky at Penn State since they worked there at the same time. So that's kind of where I got introduced into the information first. Then ended up getting a master's in sports biomechanics under Dr. Newton out of Australia, working at Ball State at the time. So that's kind of where I started to find more information. And initially I did all this to push my own training to the next level. I didn't really look at it as, I wanted to be a strength coach and I wanted to help people, but in reality I really dove into it because of the passion that I had for lifting. So that's kind of what I try to feed people at my facility and feed people that I work with all around the United States and sometimes the world. Then obviously I own my own gym like Scott was talking about. I've been lifting for 22 years. I started when I was 12. As you can see, it stunted my growth severely. I've had or still have 3 world records in powerlifting, both in equipment and raw, and multiple American national accomplishments. Currently, these 2 numbers at the bottom I just hit in February. So a 606 raw bench is a full powerlifter. There's only like 5 guys that's ever done it, one of them being Bill Kazmaier. And an 832 world record squat in just a belt, no knee wraps, just a singlet. So that record was like 15 years old when I broke that. So just to give you an idea that, the past conferences that I've talked at, I kind of wanted to push myself into raw training because we're not all in suits and we're not all in knee wraps, and you're not going to have that out in the field. You're not going to have those types of equipment to keep you safe out in Afghanistan or out in the streets if you're in the FBI or any of those things. And I think that the raw training for me, I had to sit down and look at it and go, listen, this has a lot more validity to the people that I train. And I feel like if I can do things with no equipment on, then that gives me more knowledge to you. But in reality, the training didn't change. So it works for all of it if you're smart. So more specific, my background, worked with Ranger Regiment as an advisor for them from 2006 to 2009 at Fort Benning. Mountain Athlete Warrior Director and co-founder with Major, now Lieutenant Colonel Evazai, and 1-star General Mingus. So we decided that we were going to try to take what we learned from Ranger divisions in that time and take it to a 6,000 person Army brigade. So that was a huge accomplishment and feat for us because we had to figure out how do I get my hands on 6,000 guys being one dude. That was pretty hard. And then I've been the strength and wellness coordinator for Washington Township since 2008. And I'll show you a lot of the data that I have accomplished over in that time. And that's the hard part working with the Army and showing them that this works. I get a new boss every 30 months in the Army, but working at Washington Township, I've had the same boss since 2008. So when we sat down, I was like, listen, this is gonna work, but since I only see the guys every 3 weeks, it's gonna take time to see, the residuals off of it, and he was willing to be patient and let me do my thing. So that gives you some background on what I've done, a tactical background, and obviously at my gym, I have a lot of city and county policemen that come in and just want to be strong. So we'll start with opening remarks. I think this kind of puts us and kind of snowballs everything in the right direction. Innovative organizations neither expend the time or resources on defending yesterday. What does that mean? That means the standards that we train to today, in my opinion, are mostly useless. And I hate to say it, but that's the way it is. If you look at how we fight battles now or how police officers work or how even fire departments work, the big danger for the fire departments is 2 things. Cardiovascular health because their diet sucks and they're not fit, and strength because they're lifting obese patients. I mean, just in Dublin alone, we have 10 people over 400 pounds I wonder who are the people that are going to the hospital all the time because they have health problems. It's those people. And that's the reason we got 4 or 5 firemen come in. They got to pick up a 400-pound person that's fallen, take them to the hospital. Well, I don't know if you've ever tried to pick up somebody that heavy. It's not easy. And if you go into that with lackluster strength, you're going to have major issues. The next thing that we need to talk about is kind of conjoins why we train SMART, is training is efficient if the highest level of results is achieved with the least amount of time and energy expenditure. So what does that mean? It means you got to train SMART, not hard all the time. And all these new gimmicks coming out in the last 5 or 10 years are all trying to say, hey, you know, get great in 8 weeks, get great in 12 weeks. If I look at a training protocol and it's not longer than 4 to 6 months, I don't even look at it. Because how long does it biologically take the body to really change anything? I know that I didn't get to a 600-pound bench in 8 weeks, but as soon as I figure that out, I'll let you know and charge you $1 million a piece for it. Okay? It takes years. It takes years, consistency, persistence, and smarts to get strong or to get fit and not get hurt. Okay, so that's how we kind of start the opening blow. So what is tactical training? It's training of any police, fire, or military personnel, whether specific or general, but I want to try to highlight general. Okay, we try to push so fast into specifically doing what we're doing that we forget that the base is down at the bottom of the pyramid. Your pyramid's only as tall as your base. When we've all heard that before, but how much of us actually use it? And that's a major issue. So it allows the person to perform their job at a higher standard. This could entail strength training, conditioning, or job-specific work. This area is currently lacking in many faucets, but slowly changing as insurance costs rise, performance rates decrease, and injury rates skyrocket. A couple of little unknown stats that most people don't realize is that our Army right now is close to a 30% non-deployable ratio. That means 1 out of every 3 guys has got some kind of problem that they can't go fight war. And most of those problems come from skeletal muscular injury. Why? Because when we had those testing standards back in 1960, the average guy was on a farm, baling hay, helping his dad, right? They came in at 16% body fat at about 155 to 160 pounds. How many guys do you see that big going to the Army now? Most of them never had a gym class. They don't know anything about strength training, right? And we're just going to say, hey, guess what? Go put this backpack on, go run 3 miles. That's not very smart. So on the other side of that, in the fire departments, most of these guys are not super athletes, you know, but they're asked to do super athlete stuff when you go pick up 400-pound patients. That's not normal. So our jobs are changing because we're becoming larger as a population, especially in the United States. Firemen are getting major strain on that kind of stuff, and strength has to be at a much higher level. So the other issue is the insurance costs, okay? Out in the normal jobs, insurance costs with, you know, workman's comp claims and all those things, which we'll get to later. Those are major issues, and they're causing people like me to have to come in and revamp what we're doing. But if we use the old testing standards, we're not going to fix anything. So, programming for tactical purpose. All tactical personnel should be treated as an athlete regardless of age, occupation, acute, or chronic injury. So, I know Dr. Kramer hit on that yesterday, but it's true. We have to look at all of our guys as an athlete. And the reason being is, you know, Kramer and a lot of other guys have spent their whole lives studying powerlifters and bodybuilders and, you know, sprint athletes and all these things. That's where our data and our knowledge comes from. Why don't we just modify it and use it for tactical populations? Seems smart to me. So that's kind of what you need to keep in mind when you're training your people, is train them as athletes. So program guidelines are based on needs. You want to learn how to program, you need to understand these 3 things. So 3 primary areas must be observed in order to make a proper program. First and most importantly is the need of the individual, not the need of the job. Okay, if a guy comes to you and he has no lower back muscles, it doesn't matter what you do. Have him go carry a 75-pound backpack and see how long that lasts. It's not going to last very long. So you have to look at the needs of the individual weaknesses, which we'll get to. Needs of the environment, so needs of the job. What are we doing on the job on a daily basis that puts us at risk, and what kind of fitness level do we need, either seen or unforeseen? And then third, but not the least important, is biological laws of adaptation. So how does our body adapt to our training, whether it's strength or general physical preparedness or cardio or any of that stuff? You have to follow the biological laws in order to make the proper program. If you don't, then you're just kind of sitting there spinning your wheels and trying to shoot in the dark, and it doesn't make any sense. So the first part is needs of the individual. So the person's individual needs must be addressed in order to achieve high results in any environment. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's tactical, athlete, pro, little kid, doesn't matter. If you read any of the top level books, they're going to tell you that all postural deficiencies must be fixed before you can elevate to a different training level. What does that mean? It means if you have weak hamstrings, weak lower back, weak upper back, bad posture, you can squat and deadlift all you want. You're just putting yourself in a bad spot until those are fixed. So where's the person weak? Where's the person's fitness level? Why is it important for fitness level? Well, besides the obvious reasons, is if your fitness level's low, you can't train hard. So it's funny, I take people and they come in with me and they're like, oh, he's a big powerlifter, he's not fit. Come do my warm-up. Come do my warm-up before I max, and I guarantee your strength's gonna drop 40%, but mine's not, okay? What are the time constraints and stress levels? That's another huge issue. Is it a fireman that works at like, you know, a very rural place that barely gets any work and can sit around and can train really hard? Or does he have 5 kids and, you know, they all get ADD and they're all crazy? I mean, those are all, you know, those are all factors on how hard you can train. So regardless of tactical placement, most individuals need, 1, more maximal strength. Dr. Kramer hit it on yesterday. I hope you guys were in that talk. The reason you need maximal strength is to recruit more motor fibers. He just told you guys that doing stuff till failure at 50% is not going to do that. More GPP, but that does not mean running. That's why I keep using GPP, general physical preparedness. It means being able to do almost anything at a fairly high rate and do well at it. But running doesn't transfer to that. You know, a thing I like to use when I'm telling people about cardio is take Lance Armstrong, probably one of the best cyclists to ever live, you know, and then take, what's that one guy that's a real sweet swimmer, I can't remember his name. Phelps, take Phelps. You switch them sports, even though they're athletes, you switch them sports, they're gonna suck at either one they do. You can't put Lance Armstrong in the pool and expect him to even swim with a moderate collegiate guy. Why? Because some of that stuff's very specific. So it really irks me that we go in these running tests in shorts and tennis shoes when we want these guys to be good in boots and GPS systems and armor. So a lot of the testing that I do with my guys, I put them in what they're gonna wear. So when I have my firemen out dragging dummies, they're gonna go get their bottle on, they're gonna go get their fire suits on, and they're gonna do the dummy drags. They're not doing it in tennis shoes. Why? Because it doesn't matter in tennis shoes. So individual needs, again, most common muscular weak points in tactical populations. This was in Kramer's talk as well. Lower back, upper back, and hamstrings, which is mostly knee. So we have lower back and upper back, posture muscles, lower back, hamstrings to protect the knee, and pretty much the entire posterior chain. That is the most common weak points in tactical populations, and one of it being is as children we don't do as much manual labor, therefore we don't have the postural muscles because we're sitting in chairs like we're doing right now all day. So as you can look at those pictures, just kind of some layouts, but on the right is your lower back muscles. There's a reason that people like to train biceps instead of lower back. Why? Because walking around with a lower back that just got tore up from deadlift sucks, okay? You don't have to tell me, I know. But the point of it is, those are the muscles that save you. Those are the muscles that allow you to perform better. So you have to go through that training process in order to be able to sustain a higher workload. Because contrary to popular belief, you know, doing bicep curls isn't gonna help you much with anything. Okay, so then we have a middle picture of the shoulder. We can see all the muscles of the subscap, infraspinatus, and all this stuff. The reason we have so many shoulder problems is, 1, we have poor posture, and 2, we don't have the proper back musculature to hold the shoulder in the proper position. So I always tell people, you need to do twice the amount of back work that you do front work. How many of you guys do that? Not that many, maybe a few. I mean, you know, if you got half the people, I would be impressed. But if you come in and watch, you know, a guy like me do bench press work, I'll maybe do 10,000 pounds of work total in sets and volume on bench pressing. I do 20,000 pounds of back work after I get done. Why? I'm trying to counteract the pressures so I don't get shoulder problems. Never had a shoulder problem. Been benching competitively for 25 years. Okay? Then the lower back muscles are also tied into pelvic tilt, which we'll get into posture. So your posture dictates how strong you can be due to leverage. So the next section is general physical preparation is key in order to train hard and effectively enough for progress in the present and future. But like we said, it's not always running. So on the right, you can see guys running around obstacles in full gear. You know, on the left, I'm sorry, on the right, you can see guys flipping tires, okay? Those two things are gonna transfer to multiple stuff. So when you're thinking general physical preparedness and being in shape, you wanna try to hit multiple birds with one stone, okay? Running in tennis shoes and shorts is gonna help you with one thing. Running in a straight line with tennis shoes and shorts. That stuff would help you with a lot of things. So cardio is very specific to its application, so it's optimal to do the movement that's mimic the environment. So we have the opposite side of the coin. If we don't do things that are kind of similar to what we're gonna entail, then we're gonna have problems. So I like to use kettlebell swings with a mask on, which I'm sure a lot of fighters have seen now. You got those respiratory masks that they'll train in to kind of hurt their breathing or make their breathing more difficult. So we do that. That helps with if you're carrying equipment or you're in a mask as a fire, the fire service. Dummy drags with bottle and fire gear, tire flips, sled dragging with a fast-paced walk. All these things have multiple transfer to multiple environments. Okay, so in the middle you can see we have guys doing drags, carrying each other with full equipment. Each of those guys have 100 pounds of gear on. Now we'll get to why that's important. GPP continued. Must have an agility component since the environment is ever changing in multiple facets. So we got to make sure that the stuff that we're doing also creates balance and coordination. So walking on a treadmill, just because you walk on a treadmill with a 75-pound weight vest stationary doesn't mean a whole lot in the tactical community because it's only going to make you more fit, but it's not going to help you be more coordinated. So the need of the environment. What kind of strength, GPP, endurance, and speed coordination is required to be in the tactical job? Well, they're all slightly different, even though they have some of the same kind of categories. But the fire service, in my opinion, I think needs, if you look at all their abilities, they need a lot more strength. And the reason being is because of the runs that we get a lot of overweight patients. Guys get hurt easily on that, and that's where our statistical data shows that we have problems. So those are the things you look at. When I went and worked at Ranger Division, I went and talked to the therapist. I'm like, where are our problems at? A lot of lower backs and a lot of knees. Well, guess what? When I first went in there, the guys couldn't do glute ham raises. You know what the average deadlift it was over 700 Rangers? It was under 200 pounds. But these guys carry 100 pounds of gear. So imagine when they put 100 pounds of gear on, they're at 50% of their maximum of their strength, okay? In infantry, very similar. They kind of need to be good at everything, but they're so weak that they need maximal strength as well because their strength isn't even up to par with anybody. I mean, that's the problem with it. So general needs for the tactical environment, minimal strength goals, and like I said, I have no data on this. I'm just a meathead. But I'm just telling you, if it was me, that's how strong I'd want to be. And the other thing I see is I've seen girls this strong, and I've seen guys this strong, and it doesn't affect their running. You go above this, I think it starts to affect running ability. We had a Ranger sniper, 2007. He weighed 180 pounds, could deadlift over 600, could bench over 400, and could squat right at 600, and had a 15:40 3-mile time. Dude was one of the baddest guys I've ever seen. So next time, tell me that weightlifting affects your running, and I'm just going to tell you you're out of control. But on these positions here, this is what I would try to push for as an overall spectrum. If you can squat and deadlift 2 to 2.5 times body weight, you might need to work on a different avenue of performance. If you can bench 1.5 times body weight, you're doing pretty good compared to what I've seen. Okay, but these should be goals, regardless of what your occupation is, just to live. Okay, this level of strength allows heavy and awkward jobs to be done safely. Okay, so you're not always going to be able to pick up, people are like, well, picking up weights is a lot different. We should use strongman implements. Well, you have some validity to that, but the problem is if I go pick up a 200-pound stone, it's not that big of a deal to me because my best deadlift's 805. So it's 25-30% of my best. But if that 200-pound stone and your best deadlift's 250, you're going to have a problem, right? So getting super strong allows you to do things a little bit more awkward, safer. So in the Mountain Athlete Warrior program, when I went in, we measured 6,000 guys, and the average deadlift was 180. The average weight was 182. So these guys are deadlifting their body weight. It was just absolutely out of control. And then you got them over on the left carrying 100 pounds of gear. I'm like, I don't even know how you're standing with that stuff. Seriously, it's amazing. So why are the strength goals so high? 2.5 times body weight. Maximal strength is key for injury prevention and the ability to perform heavy lifting tasks. And the reason I say that, everybody's, well, injury prevention and weights, But in reality, this is what I've seen at the fire department. This is what I've seen with my data with my 6,000 guys. Okay, carrying obese patients, moving fellow soldiers in equipment that's unstable. That's why you have to be strong. And on the right is not an uncommon thing. You go down to the grocery store, a block away, you're going to find somebody that weighs 350 pounds or more. Now, if you have to come in and you're the fire guy that has to pick that up when it falls down, you're going to be in trouble if you're weak. So, without high levels of maximal strength, General physical prepared drills with heavier loads like i.e. equipment will become strength work versus general prep work. So if my maximal strength's only being taxed at 30% versus 60%, how much longer can I do it? Right? Probably a lot longer. Real life scenarios become harder to do when the task is near maximal. So if it's 80% of my exertion, I'm not going to be able to do that very long. But if it's 30%, I can do it quite a long time. Training safely is a learned process. If you think that you're going to get good at 1 rep maxes and true strength without training it, you're out of control. There's no way. A 10 rep max is not conducive to a 1 rep max in one shape, bit, or form. So you have to learn to master weights before you learn how to pick up awkward objects. Posture is compromised when heavy workloads are present. So if you're not strong, when you go to pick something up, your posture will be compromised, therefore leading to skeletal muscular injury. So the third thing is the biological laws. So we have the law of accommodation. Okay, it states that anything that's used for too long will not create a training effect. I follow this like religion. I mean, if you came in and saw my workouts, they are so unsimilar from week to week, it would blow your mind. But I do the same thing with my other guys that we're talking about, and it works great. Okay. The key with it is that you have to be smart and understand what transfers and what doesn't. And that's the hard part. So I was actually having a talk with another professional a couple of days ago down here about this same situation. He trains very specific, and I train very, rotating. And he gets pretty good results out of what he does, and I get pretty good results out of what I do. But I've had half the injuries. And that's what matters to us, is how strong can you get and not get hurt. So the law of specificity was the other edge of the sword, states that if you want exercise to help you in something else, it's got to have similar enough, or it's got to be combined with similar stimuli in order to make it transfer. So that's from Zatsiorski from like 94. But this is the stuff, when I sit down and write programs for people, this is what I put in front of my face. Make it different, but make it specific enough to where it transfers. So another major rule that a lot of us don't follow is rule of 72 hours. Okay? Weight training should be separated with a 72-hour window of recovery for same muscle groups used. So that means if I do max effort legs on Monday, I shouldn't be ready to do volume or speed work until Thursday or Friday for weights. Okay? Now conditioning is a different situation. You got to have those in there, and those components in there as well. But for pure weight training, it should be separated 72 hours. Cardio should rotate from low intensity, less than 120 BPM, and long duration, to higher intensity burst resistance sets of 1 to 3 minutes. So basically what I do that for is if I'm walking 2 or 3 times a week at 35, 40 minutes, I got great heart health. And it also helps me recover from my lifting. But then the high intensity bursts make me quicker and more explosive when I need that too. So it's kind of a way to rotate what you do. So optimal amount of weight training days, if you can do it, is 4. Optimal amount of GPP, SPP days, which is like more anaerobic conditioning, is 3. And then optimal amount of walking for police and fire is 3 to 4 hours a week. Okay? And this is just stuff that I've played with and it's worked really well. There's probably other data that may state other things. And then the military, I know I don't have them run more than 9 miles a week total. That includes sprints. And guess what? The 3-mile times for the Rangers and all that stuff, the 2-mile times, they all start going down, they all get better. Why? Because they don't have any impact injuries. They're not all beat up all the time. There were some places that I would come into and they'd be running 20 miles a week. They're getting slower and beat up and more screwed up and weaker. So I have kind of found with 9 miles a week that it works really well. So this gives your basic adaptation model from Clavora, which is pretty old, but it's a really simple way to understand why you do law of 72 hours, why you do law of accommodation, and those two things. Because if you do law of accommodation and you mix up your training, then you hit different stimuluses at different angles. Therefore, your supercompensation comes and you're not digging a hole like in the lowest line. Because if you do squats with straight bar, squats with straight bar, squats with straight bar, you're just digging a hole. But if I do squats with straight bar and then squats with chains, do a high box, and then no box with a camber bar and bands, my body uses a slightly different stimulus, but I'm able to squat heavy every week. So it keeps me in the B area, okay? But the problem is we get used to things that we do, we do things that we like, we ignore things that we hate, and eventually we don't get any better because the weaknesses are eventually our limitations. So that's something that I always put in front of my face too when I'm writing my programs. Okay, I want to try to stay above baseline. how do I do that? I gotta mix it up, I gotta change loads, and change positions all the time. So, I kind of threw this out, and I know it's a lot of stuff on one slide, but I wanted you guys to have it in your notes. You do 1 maximal day for lower, okay, which is usually a 1 to 3 rep max, sometimes up to 5, followed by 4 to 6 accessory exercises, which we'll get into what those are. Then 6 hours post, I do cardio, I do oxidative, which is my slow running, or I'm sorry, my slow walking or moderate walking at under 120 beats per minute. And then 72 hours later, I do a volume or speed day, depending if my guys need muscle mass or they need to be more explosive. And then 4 to 6 accessory exercises after that. So that's mostly my leg training, okay? Then on maximal upper day, I do 4 to 6 accessory exercises after some kind of a heavy pressing movement. Then 6 hours post, I do glycolytic cardio, which would be like your anaerobic conditioning, stuff less than a minute. Like if I take a 50-pound kettlebell and swing it for a minute, that's more anaerobic conditioning. And then 72 hours later, I do a volume day, 4 to 6 accessory exercises. Then 2 to 3 GPP days are job specific, but they're also very different to each other. That way I can throw those in during the week and my body uses it as a new stimulus. Therefore, I still stay up in that super compensated range. That's what gets complicated about training tactical populations. We got to work on strength, we got to work on getting in good shape, and we got to stay healthy all in the same rip. And sometimes those things don't coincide unless you have separation of time and recovery. Okay, it's all about, you know, I always say this, it's not what you can do, it's what you can recover from. Okay? And if you can't recover from your workouts, you're not making any progress. So you have to have that 72-hour rule. I found that it helps with everybody I've ever trained. And you got to make sure that you're mixing up what you do. And it gets more complicated if you want to be in good shape too, as far as sprinting, lifting, and all those types of things. So an example for the fire service, day 1 we do stair climbing with full gear, 25 floors for time. So we're kind of working that middle and green line. And then day 2, Jacob's ladder with a mask for 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. We're up around the red line, maybe hitting a little bit of the blue. And every day off should have 20 to 30 minutes of cardio built in for heart health. And that was more for my firemen because we have cardiovascular problems with them. A lot of that's diet, but if I keep them on cardio every day, then it seems to help out with that a lot and they recover a lot faster from their working out. So, maximal effort training guidelines needs to be varied on a weekly basis. So when I go in and do squats, I got this huge list of stuff that I do and I rotate about every 20 to 25 weeks. So if you see, like, if you're to come into my gym, I have all these different variations of squats just laid out. And I have records for them. And what I do is I rotate them. And what's funny is every time I go back to that exercise 20 or 30 weeks later, I'm better at it. But I never trained it. How did I get better? I just got stronger. So my body is close enough to the stimulus to get better, but it's different enough where I keep making progress. Does that make sense? But if how many of us just go in and we squat with a straight bar and straight weight all the time? Or the same kind of system that we use? Well, after 3 weeks, it's worthless unless you can keep bumping up the intensity. And that's what's tough. So it must be taught in a group setting for spotting and safety. So I never go in and lift by myself. I got 4 or 5 guys that come in with me. I know that's not always ideal for everybody, but if you truly want to use maximal effort training without machines and you want to do it right, you got to have spotters. And most of us work in teams anyway, especially in PT. In the fire department, there's no need to not have spotters either. So unless you're off on your own, or like you would be if you didn't have the NSCA, right? You'd have to kind of work out on your own. It would limit what you could do. The key is find a group of guys that have the same goals and push for it. So in these pictures, you can see, it's kind of hard to see on the right, but a girl named Ann, she's squatting with kettlebells hanging from bands on a bar to a box. Obviously, it's not that super deep. We were very limited in what we had, but 5 weeks after that, she squatted with no box and had to go super deep. Point being is changing it all the time, but a lot of people haven't seen that style of squatting, which is kettlebells hanging from bands on the bar, and it's more, I call it a chaotic method, but it's hard. And it also develops a lot of stability type musculature. Then over here we got speed bench with bands. It's hard to see the red bands hooked up. And these are all, I taught these guys how to do this pretty well in about 25 hours. I mean, as far as over a whole week. They were able to be very consistent and learn how to speed bench and max work. It worked out really well. So people that say that this can't be done, I did it with 6,000 guys. So maximal effort exercises, we're not going to go over all these. I just wanted to give you an idea. I gave you about the first 15 of them on my board. These get rotated every week. So obviously they're still squatting, they're still deadlifting, It's still those types of things, but they're rotated all the time. That way my body has to come to a new stimulus. The other thing that it does is it decreases psychological burnout. If you're doing something different all the time, your body won't get burned out nearly as fast. I think in the old Soviet systems, just for the clean and jerk and the snatch, they had, what, 65 variations of exercises that they rotated? Why? Because they got more athletes out of it. Whereas the old Bulgarian system, which was the old Soviet system, I think they only had like 7 variations of the Olympic lifts. So they found the freaks, but they were beat up. So they started to realize that you needed more variation in training. So these are some upper body exercises we picked: narrow grip bench, decline bench, football bar, incline hanging kettlebells, which there you can see a better picture of what we do. Okay, my best on that is 515 and hanging kettlebells. And then it's like this on the way down. You know what I mean? But I don't have any shoulder problems. The point is my stabilizers stay locked in, and I don't do the same thing all the time. So we change, like 5-second pauses on the bench. We might just do touch and goes, all kinds of different stuff, but it transfers very well. So the key to max effort is variation for both law of accommodation and also to make sure the strength is transferable in multiple environments. So if you squat in a certain position with your toes at a certain way, with a certain bar and a certain resistance all the time, you're only strong there. But if you're strong wide, narrow, on a box, no box, chains, bands, Lighten method, look all that stuff up if you don't know what it is. Point being is if you're strong in all those variables, you'll have a lot of transfer, okay? Especially picking up awkward objects. So here we got guys squatting with no box this time, and then guys deadlifting over here on the right. This is all at Fort Carson. So now to accessory exercises. We kind of get an idea of why maximal effort's important through Kramer's talk, to innervate more deeper motor units and all those types of things. But in my opinion, on top of the max effort work, number 2 is picking the proper accessory exercises. It's not what you want to do. It's where you're weak, okay? So these exercises are always based on individual or group weaknesses, which are usually about the same, and department injury data. So the first thing I did when I went to the Rangers and I went to Washington Township and I went to 4th Infantry units, I went and talked to all of the therapists. I went and talked to all the insurance. I'm like, where's our biggest problems? Lower backs, knees, and shoulders. Okay, where are we weak? Lower backs, knees, and shoulders. Guess what constitutes 80% of their work when they get done with their max work? Lower backs, knees, and shoulders. It's not complicated, okay? So after the assessment, we concluded the strength levels here were below optimal in all areas. So there's a reverse hyperextension. Kind of builds up your lower back while tractioning the spine. Every one of my clients use it. We try to get it no matter where we work. It does help. And especially if the guys are having to run or do explosive movements that are high impact because you're tractioning the spine. That's another thing that I didn't really write a slide on, and I wish I did after I looked back through it like 15 days ago after we already had to turn it in. Traction versus compression, okay? That's another major issue that we don't focus on, which is basically meaning that if I do stuff that's compressive like squats and deadlifts, or I do jumps, or I'm running with 100 pounds of gear on my back, or whatever, what am I doing to decompress the spine after that? So every time we get done squatting heavy, or every time we get done deadlifting heavy, on my side of the ball, we're always doing glute hams and reverse hypers to stretch it back out. But what do you guys do? Probably nothing. And that's why you get that constant overuse injuries at the spinal levels, because you're not doing anything traction. So are you at least getting 1 or 2 traction-based exercises every time you do a lower body workout or things of that nature? So the average deadlift, it was 185, and bench was 165, and that's at 2010, but that's actually when I ended. But 2006, when I took the data down, that's what those guys were capable of doing on average. There were guys that were freaks, of course, but on average, those guys could run for miles, but they were weak. So what do all tactical populations need? Like what we talked about it, reverse hyper, glute ham, belt squats. That's another major key. The belt squat allows you to load your lower body to the gills without getting any adverse spinal compression, okay? We need squat racks, obviously deadlift areas, and various cardio equipment to make sure that if we got guys that are injured, they can go and do other things. But this is what I try to get in every place that I have, because I can teach everything with this stuff. Then obviously bands and chains, but a lot of times that might take a while. But if we can get all this stuff in every place that we train, we're doing really well. And as you can see, most of that is traction-based accessory exercises. So what does this give when you develop a program with these tactics? Well, these are medical claim costs. So in 2007, per year, we were at $130,000 in medical claim costs at Washington Township, and 130-person fire department, which is moderate sized, okay? They were out of control. We started the strength and conditioning program. I told them it was going to take a while because I only saw them every 3 weeks, right? That's where we're at in 2013. That was our data. We went from spending $130,000 to $4,000, okay? And it's a nice even line over 11, 12, and 13. So their insurance costs are going to drop next year by considerable amounts to the department. This is our claim summary, complete, medical only, lost time, and total. So in 2006 and 7, they were starting to get up around $250,000. Look where we got it down in 11, 12, and 13. So this is over a department, but sometimes this kind of stuff takes time. That's why it's hard to implement in the Army, because I get a new boss every 30 months. But I told this guy, I said, it's going to take till 2012 or 13 to see what we're doing because I don't get my hands on the guys enough. But that's what you get if you train max effort. So what the average deadlift go up to? When I first got at the fire department, it was around 170. Now it's 350. And I'm pretty happy with that, only seeing the guys every 3 weeks. Okay? The guys follow a regiment that I have, online portal. They're separated in 4 different categories. So they got beginner, intermediate, advanced, and fire challenge, which gives me an ability to put somebody in one of those 4 categories and then personalize it from there. So I get guys that's never worked out before they start in beginners. I get guys that are meatheads. They go to fire challenge or advanced, and then we modify it from there, depending on their needs or their injuries. But that's what a program can do if it's set up correctly with getting stronger, and that's just fire department. So at Mountain Athlete Warrior, by the time we got the ball rolling and got the equipment that we needed, we only had 10 months. So we tried to start this program in 2010. I didn't get rolling until 2012. My boss left in early 2013. We had 10 months, and then they deployed. So obviously I didn't get the data that I wanted, but I still got great data. Average PT score went from 210 to 265. So we went from a D average to a B plus average in 10 months, over 6,000 guys. And guess what? We were doing max effort deadlifts and max effort squats all the time. So it was on a 300 scale over 6,000 men. Injury rates dropped 15% in the next 1.5 years, and average deadlift went from 175 to 325 for those guys. So how I was able to get a hold of 6,000 men was I trained the PT guys in control. So what I did is I brought in 25 guys every week for 15 weeks, and I taught them how to train, how to write workouts, how to see weaknesses, let them implement it, and then go and check on them. So after 10 months, that's what you got. So I'll take 265 any day for a normal infantry unit when 300 is perfect. That's kind of what I think you need to get in Ranger School, right? So key points to this talk. Maximal effort training is key to injury reduction and performance increases. Okay? Knowing your team and department's weaknesses is knowing how to make positive progress and increase longevity. This is what guides the accessory work that I say is so important. And understanding basic laws of training help to create long-term progress. So you don't understand the basic laws of training, law of accommodation, law of specificity, 72-hour rule, all those things, then you're going to have a lackluster performance at some point. So any questions? That's all I had. I know it's a lot of information to throw out there, but no questions. Yeah.
I saw you speak a couple of years ago at the separate NSCA conference. Do you feel that your research has improved, increased, or changed at all since that time?
No, because I don't think we've been able to put. I mean, as far as I know, at a large scale, I'm the only one that's been able to come in and do that type of stuff at a large scale. And everybody has their different modes and things that they're comfortable with using and things like that. But I feel like we're going in the right direction. I just feel like because boss has changed so much in the military, we can't stick and get stuff done. You know, it's like me. I mean, I haven't been out at Fort Carson for about 8-9 months because all my bosses are now at Fort Knox and down at Tampa. They all rotate. So if we could get guys in charge to stick in the same spot, which will never happen, and change stuff, we would see huge improvements. But it's going to be hard to do that when the control of the PT is in charge of people that have moderate to low-level education in exercise science. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you advise your PT instructors to deal with people that are always training extra and not getting that rest?
Well, it just has to take buy-in, and that takes time. So a lot of times, that's a good question, but a lot of times it's the reverse. See, you got three people in life, but you got three people in Army too. Guys that like to weightlift, guys that like to run, and guys that don't like to do jack shit. Am I right? And I'm more worried about the guys that don't want to do anything because that creates a larger base of the population, even in the Army, than the other two. If a guy comes to me and he is an awesome runner and he hates lifting weights, I'll get him to like weights. It might take a while, but to get the guy that hates to work out, that's the one you gotta really sell to. And I'm sure all of you understand that. But what I teach them is I show them the law of 72 hours, and most of the time I'm very lucky that I've pushed my own limits to the point that people look at me and go, holy shit, this guy knows what he's talking about. So then when I get hold of those guys for a week, they are totally bought in. They don't want to do extra stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's hard when you know you're dealing with guys that think they know what they're doing because they did a 135 bench press max at a meet like 10 years ago. I understand, I've been there. But it just takes time. You just got to keep showing them the information and the education, okay? Any other questions? Yeah.
I have two questions. Do you rotate your accessory work just as much as your the core, primary movements that you do, and also do you cycle them depending upon if it's a max effort day or a volume or dynamic?
Yeah, it depends on how much equipment I have available, but I always rotate rep schemes on my accessory work. So like on my max effort day, I keep everything heavy and hard. So I'll set my glute ham raise where my knees are like up on the pad, and I might only be able to get four to six reps. And then maybe the next day, I might still use the glute ham raise, but I'll back it way off at a spot where I can get 15 or 20. Or I may put a hamstring emphasis on my accessory work because that's a weak spot. I might put a hamstring emphasis on my lower body max day, and then I'll put an upper back emphasis on my 72 hours later to fix that area. So I always change emphasis, but yeah, I still use some of the same equipment. I might add a band or put a chain around my neck or something to make it slightly different or harder or easier. So I'm always changing volume, rep schemes, and positions every workout. Yeah. Yeah.
So is the township that the fire department that you do?
Yeah.
Okay, so two questions. What kind of schedule are they on, and their call volume?
Do I know what?
Roughly their call volume.
Tall volume?
Call.
Call volume. Oh, they're pretty busy because we're right around a huge bypass, so they get a lot of car accidents, and then they also get a lot of calls on heavier patients because we have quite a few of them in that area. Ask me the first question again.
So their schedule.
Oh. Okay, so what I do is I see them every 3 weeks on Thursdays. We have a wellness Thursday. And what I do is they bring in their workouts that they're responsible for doing on duty days and off days. Trust me, it took 5 years to get there. And then what they have to do is check up on with me, and then I make them do their heavier max effort stuff when I'm available. And then I've got it so good now where the guys will stay after work on first or thirds, and they'll come in on their off days if they want to do something heavy, and then they'll have me there at the fire department. But what I did is we had a $25,000 allocation for equipment and like health and wellness like products every year. So what I did was every time we have 5 fire departments, 5 stations, every station I had put exactly the same equipment that I have in the station that I teach them. So when they go home, there's no guesswork. They go back to their fire station, they got everything that I got in the big one that I teach. So that makes it nice, but like I said, it took 5 years to get there. Yeah.
First of all, great talk.
Thanks.
One question I'm trying to understand because as an Army guy and also working, how do you overcome with that large brigade type of training, how
Yep.
do you overcome the fact that, you get this small window of time, 6 to 8 in the morning or whatever, typical
Yeah.
basis. And the problem is to get other time, then you're taking away what their mission is, what their duty is.
Right.
So the question is, a lot of places are faced with this kind of roadblock that you, even with the great facilities, you can only change about 100, 200 people in that
Yep.
window.
Yep.
And how do you
How did I overcome that?
solve that problem of just the math of Mission Central? I mean, typically they don't give you the whole day to
Yeah. What we did was the nice thing is I think you gotta attack from the top. So when I went in for that job, instead of sitting down and going, okay, I know what you need, this is what we need to do, I said, listen, you're gonna have to do it my way. You need to buy the equipment that I need, and you need to have it at a volume which I can make changes. And I'm not gonna take the job unless you're gonna give me that stuff that I need. So when I went in and set that parameter, it made it a lot easier because then the colonel signs off and says, this is what will be done. This is the things that, you know, are gonna come in. So what I did is every unit had their own gym. So we created a portable gym that went with them no matter where they went. Afghanistan, no matter what, it went into a big thing, and they had squat racks, reverse hypers, glute ham raises, bumper plates, kettlebells, everything that I taught them how to use, they had with them. And so they were only separating that gym time between like 75 guys. So we created, I think it was like 300 portable gyms that they could roll out, assemble quickly, and be ready to rock and roll.
You know, the other problem you get from a policy standpoint is that how you keep resources, because a lot of the things that are done at the two-star and then down to the colonel level, they can do this, they can do it, but in reality, sometimes they're in violation of materials command distribution and funding and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that gray area.
Yeah, kind of.
But I think the way you're getting all these people, with the limitations on duty time, you're saying is that you create these kind of mini units, basically, can have all basic equipment. So
Yep.
you're not running off of a large.
Nope. And that helps me with my time too. Yeah. That helps me with the time of the brigade, because if that equipment is available to them and they only got to walk across the bay to train, we just saved an hour and a half of their day. So now the upper superior officers aren't nearly as pissed off that they're taking time to go train because it's so convenient. That's number one that it helps. The other big thing is, like I said, is having buy-in from the top. If you know, Colonel Mingus believes that his brigade is weak and needs work and will do anything to do, he makes time for them to train and puts it as a high priority.
But some of the things in typical training, you know, that's, I know, I think what TRADOC has always been challenged with blockades.
Yeah.
Based on the duty day.
Yeah.
How you get to use that duty day.
Yeah.
And, you know, officially, so to speak.
Yeah, and they also tell me, you know, when they come back that they have much more time and availability to train when they're deployed. But we made that possible by giving each unit a gym.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, it helped. I mean, that took a long time for me to think about and figure out, but that's how I got around those things. Yeah.
So what's your assessment like to put people in different groups, the beginning, intermediate, and advanced groups?
How do I do that?
Yeah.
Well, usually you can tell immediately, but what I'll do is I'll bring them in. Well, first of all, I can tell by looking at them. You know, if the guy's got 32-inch thighs and veins on his calves, he's probably going to be okay at the advanced workout, and if the guy's got an 80-inch waist, we got problems. But with the fire department, what I usually do is I'll take them through basically a squat assessment test with just a bar. I'll watch their form and see what happens with that. And then I'll have them drag a dummy for about 100 feet, 185-pound dummy, and see where they break or if they're getting tired or how winded they are. And then we'll usually just do like a stair step test where I'll put them give them like a 30-pound hose and have them walk up and down the stairs 20 flights. If they can't do that, then I know where their fitness level is. So it's not super. It's more complicated to put guys in categories in the Army or the Rangers because all of them are really good. So their level of ability is so close that you don't know really where to put them. But the fire department's really easy. It's 3 divisions. They don't do. They kind of work out, or they kind of run and they stay slightly fit and stay fairly lean. Those are really the only 3 variables in the fire department overall. So it's kind of easy to put them in groups. And then the other easy way is how much time are they going to give me or give themselves to train. If a guy's like, hey, I got 5 kids and I'm not really big into working out, I'm going to put him on the beginner workout because he only has to work out twice a week and just maintain some cardio. You know what I mean? So it's kind of just asking them a lot of questions and taking them through some base stuff and see where their experience level is. But I've gotten most of the guys that started on the beginner, they're up in the advanced workouts now, which is great. But that's, like I said, it takes a long time.
What are your beginner workouts?
They don't do any real max effort work yet. It's all orientation of the equipment. It's more general physical prep based. So they do a lot of kettlebell swings. They do a lot of sledgehammer swings. They do a lot of just basic, sit-ups. I have them get really comfortable with using the reverse hyper, get their hamstrings kind of strong. So it's basic, but it's still starting to push towards those weak points. That way they have a little bit more injury prevention. They're a little stronger in their weak points. So it's just kind of getting a feel for them. But like I said, it takes a while. So it's not something you're going to come in and change in like 2 hours. Yeah.
How do you deal with like a lack of movement proficiency coming in with guys like you're teaching them how to squat, how to bench, you have obviously a method and style that you want to see them execute when they're executing that movement, and they're not at that level. So how do you deal with the lack of movement proficiency that you encounter?
I start them on things that are very simple. So like a box squat, I'll start them on a box squat and I'll keep it real high. like literally like 4 inches high. And then in a couple of weeks, I drop it down an inch lower, an inch lower, an inch lower, an inch lower. And then have them doing the kettlebell swings and all that stuff starts to break all that free. I mean, we got 55-year-old guys at Washington that can do amazing things now. I mean, I'll bet you, I got 10 guys over 50 years old that can bench over 325. And they never had previous weight training, like, you know, other than just recreational BS, you know what I mean? So what it is just slow and steady. So if, you know, you're not gonna have that movement proficiency issue when they're young, like military ranger. They're gonna be a little bit better at it just because they're better athletes sometimes. But in the fire department, it's just a slow, steady progression. Just, you know, start them high, work them low. Take your time with them, you know. That's the key, is taking your time to change. Yeah.
In the one slide that was pretty busy, it didn't really show whether or not you did your cardiovascular work prior to your strength training.
Uh-huh.
Or are
Yeah.
they on the same day?
It did. Hold on, I'll show you. So you see 6 hours post cardio oxidative after max effort day. So I was just playing around one day and I was doing heavy squats. This was like 6 or 8 years ago. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna walk 30 minutes, 6 hours after I do my heavy lifting. I started doing it and I started realizing I was recovering really fast. So I started applying that with my ranger divisions and my cops and stuff. Like, man, we feel way better than just sitting around. So that's kind of how that got started. But there's a 6-hour window. I think that's in some Soviet books. And when they did multiple trainings and days, they had a 6-hour window to make sure that the hormonal systems were coming back to neutral. Is that correct, Dr. Kramer? So, yeah, 6-hour rest windows to bring back testosterone levels and decrease cortisol. Make sure you get rehydrated in food. So 6 hours post or pre. But I always put weights first. I'm biased, but I'm also realize where the weak points are of the soldier. Like I said, on average, you're going to be more impressed with a guy how far he can run in the Army and Rangers than how much he can lift. So which one comes first? The weak spot. Now I said, you know, some people I'll run into and they'll be stronger than they are cardio. I'll put cardio first. I have no problems with that. But most of the times, the people you're going to deal with, they're weaker than they are cardiovascular in shape, especially at the Army and Ranger level. Yeah.
Sorry, about that same slide. How exactly do you intersperse the weight days and the cardio days?
How do I separate them? Yeah. Well, if we know 72-hour rule, then we know where we're going to put our weights, right? So then in between that, we make cardio float around the weight training. Does that make sense? So it's kind of all meshed together. So if I'm doing max effort legs on Monday, then I'm going to do cardio 6 hours later. Then Tuesday, I'm going to do max effort upper. The key is I leave it open because unless you're a professional athlete and you have your own schedule, or you're like me, you got your own facility, you're going to have to do this as good as you can. You're going to have to fit it in when you can. But if you want to train optimal, that's how much you need to be doing. Does that make sense? But you're not going to be able to say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because if I do that, that's great, but it's how much is that's usable for you guys? Not really, but you know that's what you need to do and you need to fit in it as much as you can. So I didn't lay out days because what's the point? You know what I mean? I know it's very variable. Yep.
Kind of to that point, firefighters, do you recommend that they use the days that they're on shift, like GPP days, and the weight days and off days?
It depends on their fitness level. I've gotten the guys from 2008 to now, I've gotten the guys to where I can max them out and they're fine working out. They're fine working the rest of the day. That's not going to be the key though in the beginning. You gotta remember it took me 6 years to get there. So, you know, like I remember going, the first time I went to that fire department, I had guys swinging a 25-pound kettlebell, like kettlebell swings. I had them each do 3 sets of a minute as part of their workout, and I damn near got fired. And I'm like, really? I got like 60-year-old ladies that do that at my gym. And once I told that to the chief, he's like, oh, well, screw it then. You know? I was like, come on, seriously. Okay. Any other? Yeah.
You emphasize back workouts, close to the chest. So what do you like to do for variation for back?
Well, in the military, if you want to increase your pull-ups, you got to do heavy rows. Okay? When I weigh 305, I think the last time I tried to do pull-ups, I don't even do pull-ups with real weight anymore, but I'll put like 60 pounds of chain around my neck and still do 10 reps at 300 pounds. But I don't do pull-ups all the time. So most people will say, oh, you got to do pull-ups all the time when you get good at pull-ups. I do tons of bent over rows. So if I can do bent over rows with 500, then I can do pull-ups all day. So hit stuff that hits 2 birds with 1 stone. Lots of rowing. You need lots of rowing because the key to learning how to do pull-ups and get your back strong is learning how to use your back muscles. And most people don't have a good central nervous system connection to their rhomboids and and their lats, they don't know how to use them. So when I'm doing pull-ups, you know, I squeeze my lats and my back helps me up. That's why I'm able to do extra weight and be at a heavier weight. So what I try to do is I don't teach people how to do pull-ups by doing pull-ups because they already know how to use their arms. You got to isolate the back muscles. So I do anything that tries to isolate back muscles. I'll do like break my rows up into a 2 position. So I'll make them row with all the back that they can and then use the arms. That way they learn to activate the lats first. So just anything different is better. I know that's hard to swallow, but it's true. Yep.
So how about the psychological game with these guys? Because I mean, I've done max efforts and it wears on the mind, yeah.
That's why you rotate every 25 weeks. They don't see the same exercise every 25, you know, but every 25 weeks, that helps with the mind game. And like I said, we all talk about mental toughness. Well, guys that can max effort 1 rep and do it proficiently every week, that's tough. You know, that's as tough as trying to run hard or whatever. The key is it will build mental toughness, but like I said, if you rotate those exercises in a vast array, like 25 different things, you're gonna really not have that problem. Because I've done it, I do it with 55-year-old women that have no workout experience at all. I just rotate their maximums, and I don't let that, they don't notice the exercise. So when they come to it, there's no psychological strain on it because they're like, oh, I gotta squat heavy again today? Yeah, you didn't do that until 25 weeks ago, like a year ago, dude. Yeah.
Matt, do you see a change in people's attitudes towards lifting heavy weights and maximum weights with weight loss? I mean, for years we got told you've got to run marathons, you've got to do long hours on the treadmill to lose weight, but
Yeah.
obviously the data's changing now.
Yeah.
People are coming on board with that. Do you see that changing out in the field and guys tuning into that sort of?
Yeah, I do. He's asking, you know, how do you talk people into losing weight and lifting weights? Because that usually is not conducive. You know, in the old days, we didn't think, oh, you're going to bulk up, you're going to get massive. Just come to my facility. That's all I got to say. I got girls in there 60 years old that make dudes at 20 look bad. You know, and they're lean. That's the thing. They don't look like powerlifters. They look like they do cardio all day, and they're super lean and vascular, and they lift weights.
With women too. I mean, I don't know how many people.
Yeah.
I'd say to women getting lifting weights, and they go, "Oh, I'm going to get big. I'm going to get big legs."
Yeah. Let me tell you something. If you're a girl in the audience, or you know, whatever, how you now that we're a don't ask, don't tell society or whatever, don't realize this: how you look and how much weight you have on you is 80% diet. Go talk to any bodybuilder. Go talk to any figure girl. We got 2 figure girls that are IFBB pros in the gym, and in the off season, they're $180. They still look cranked, and then they get down to 140 and look insane. And guess what? You know how much cardio they do? 0. They just eat super clean when they get ready for shows. It's all about how much muscle mass you have. You know, if your legs are feeling swollen but they're not vascular, you know, usually women, and Kramer could talk to you about this a lot better than I could, but what I've noticed is that women, when they have no weight training, the first 6 to 8 weeks, they start retaining water when they train weights, because it's like a protective mechanism, correct? Maybe other reasonings too, but that's how I explain it. So you're going to have swelling, you know, but as you get better and better and better, that hypertrophy kind of feel, especially for girls, it starts to go away. And then as the diet cleans up, everything starts to lean out. So in my opinion, it's starting to change because more people see these people in magazines and want to know what they're doing, you know, or these IFBB pros, and then they start realizing it's just nutrition. You don't want to be huge, don't eat huge. It's real simple. You know, I cut my calories back like 1,500 a day. I go from 305 to 280 in like 2 months. And then if I cut it back 2,000 calories, I get down to like 265. So if you don't want to be big, just don't eat big. Yeah. Yeah.
Looking at this schedule for like a week, you have one day where you do max effort with lower body. That's squat or deadlift.
Squat or deadlift, anything strenuous to the lower body. Yeah.
So you wouldn't do a max effort squat and then a max effort deadlift later.
No. Not unless they're powerlifters. It's totally different. But if you're talking to a strength an athlete or a tactical person, 1 maximal effort strain per week, in my opinion. Lower body, then 1 maximal effort strain upper body. But the real important thing, because you're trying to get these guys to be more athletic with this strength, in my opinion, is having the dynamic day, making sure that they're training speed correctly. Are you doing your 10 sets of 2 on squats? Are you doing your 10 sets of 3 on bench? Utilizing chains and bands, accommodative resistance, and getting explosive, and working on power output versus just pure weights on the bar. You know, there's definitely a huge correlation to that, and trying to get maximal strength to transfer to power. And you got to have a dynamic day, in my opinion, to do that at the high level. But we even use it with our athletes, and it works great, even if they're not just strength athletes.
So you consider like a power effort day separate from your max effort?
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's part of your GP.
72 hours later. So one max day and then one volume or dynamic day. And the reason I put volume day is because most people are comfortable with volume. The dynamics would be a whole nother topic that we would take 2 hours to discuss. But in reality, you can look this stuff up and find quite a bit of information on it. But you got to do a day that you strain, and you got to do a day that you're powerful. And you got to separate those in 72 hours to give mostly the CNS time to recover versus the muscle tissue, in my opinion. Yeah.
I feel like you have to do more fatigue management sometimes with operational schedules, whether it's like there was a call at 2 a.m. and they're scheduled to do a max effort
Yeah.
day, or they had an
Yeah.
operator the day before, they're out doing long control.
Yeah, good point. So he's saying, the other stressors involved with the job, how does it affect these things? And it does, but the problem is most of the strength level that we deal with, it doesn't. And I hate to say that, but they're not me. If I go in and I haven't got a full amount of rest, I'm not squatting 800. Maybe I have to back it up to 7. But most of the guys haven't pushed that limit yet to where they can't come in a little tired and still do well. So I think that's something that is feasible and understandable, but at what level? Probably a level that none of us are going to deal with very often. Is that it? Yeah. 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes to pick my brain before I go find some food.
I have a question here in the corner.
Yeah.
Just the separation of 72 hours, strength from dynamic effort, is that dependent on upper and lower, or is
It's exclusive to those muscle groups. So you could do max effort legs on Monday and max effort upper on Tuesday. And then Wednesday you'd probably want to take off. Then you could do max effort or it's dynamic or volume lower Thursday and then upper Friday. And I usually try to do that with my military guys because they want to have the weekends off to go and get hammered. Just being honest. But I do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday weights. And then in between that, 6 hours post, I have them do their cardio after work. So the PT time is in the morning is dedicated towards weights, and then after work is dedicated towards cardio. And most of the times once the guys buy in and see everybody else getting better, they're going to do it too. Especially at that age where they're real competitive, at least what I've experienced. Yeah.
the norm, the 2.5 lower body, 1.5?
Yep.
Say you reach that, you said maybe change it up. Well, what are your suggestions there? Add band tension?
You mean once you get to this?
Yeah.
Well, once you get to this, now you can play. Now you can do hard stuff. Now you can do crazy things and not get injured. That's why I want people to get up to that level, because then the amount of stuff you can do for GPP, you can get a 300-pound dummy and drag it 100 feet instead of a 180-pound dummy. All those types of things. It allows you to work harder, but not necessarily train differently. But once you get up to that point, then strength becomes I'm not saying as important, but it becomes level now. It becomes equal. And most of the time, it's easy to get cardio up, but it's hard to get weight training up, so you got to stay on it. And like we all know, getting a 2.5 times body weight squat, regardless of how much you weigh, is not an easy task. It's going to take years to train, and even for the genetically gifted sometimes. But it nonetheless should be a goal. Okay, that's it. Yeah, okay, one more.
Kind of more like a powerlifting question.
Yeah.
You were talking about the 72-hour window. When you're actually training for a meet or a contest, how far out do you start doing all 3 lifts in the same day?
Never do.
Never do, not till competition day.
Yep.
Okay. And when you're doing that, say 10 days, 3 weeks out, what are your percentages getting up to that? 95, 100, 105?
That's what's funny is, everybody, the most I worked up to squat 832 raw was 755 for 2, 91% for 2. It's not what you can do, it's what you can recover from. And I don't know how many people I've ever ran into at my level that have said, oh man, I squatted 750 easy last week. I can't do 750 this week. Well, no. You know what I mean?
With that being said, do you back out 10 days before your
I back out 14 days. 14 days I never go over 50%.
That's what I was going to ask you. How close to the competition do you go to 50%?
The better you get, the stronger you get, the more recovery you need. It becomes more about recovery than about training. That's where people get confused. They think that the stronger guys do the harder stuff. Well, there's a guy named Andy Bolton. I don't know if you ever heard him unless you're a powerlifter. He deadlifted 1,003. He was the first man to pull 1,000. You know how much he did in training? 650 is as much as he ever went up to for like 20 weeks before that. He said it's all about bar speed. He's exactly right. So my point being is, it's not always what you can do, it's what you can recover from. So I never push above 90% on my true lifts, like my true squats. Now in between that, I will smash myself with something insane, like 2 black bands, and like my best lift, when I squatted 1200 in gear, I did 765 and 550 pounds of band tension on a squat, which was like 1300 at the top, so it's above 100%. But then when I picked up the 1200, it was cake. But that was like 5 weeks prior, not the week before. And then actually I had to recover from that for 5 weeks. I actually got sick. And my body got so beat down, I got sick and I had to back off my training, and then I was recovered and ready to go. So it's complicated. Cool. All right, if anybody has any questions, I'll hang out in the hall for a while.